They whispered that the Moretti bloodline was cursed. Roman Moretti, the most feared don in New York, controlled the docks, the politicians, and the streets. But there was one thing: he couldn't control the silence of his only son, Leo. For 4 years, doctors said the boy was born deaf, a broken heir in a world that demanded perfection. Roman was ready to give up, ready to send the boy away to an institution. That was until the new maid, a quiet woman named Molly, interrupted a meeting with the heads of the 5 families. She didn't bring coffee. She didn't bring apologies. She walked right up to the Don, trembling, but determined, and pulled out an object from her apron that didn't just shock him, it changed the history of the underworld forever. This is the story of betrayal, silence, and the woman who risked her life to scream the truth. The rain hammered against the reinforced glass of the penthouse overlooking Central Park. Inside, the air was colder than the storm raging outside. Roman Moretti stood by the window, his reflection ghostly against the city lights. He was a man carved from marble and scar tissue, 32 years old, possessing a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that looked like they had seen the end of the world. He was the capo dei capi, the boss of bosses. He had everything a man could kill for, except the one thing: he actually needed a successor. Behind him, in the center of the sprawling Persian rug, sat 4-year-old Leo. The boy was small for his age, with pale skin and his mother's dark curls. He was playing with wooden blocks, stacking them meticulously. When a clap of thunder shook the room, vibrating the floorboards, Leo didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just kept stacking. "He doesn't even hear the storm," a voice sneered from the doorway. Roman didn't turn. He knew the voice. It was Dario, his younger brother. Dario was everything Roman wasn't: loud, brash, and desperate for validation. "Leave him be, Dario," Roman said, his voice a low rumble. "I'm just stating facts, fratello," Dario said, walking into the room and pouring himself a glass of whiskey. "The commission is getting restless. The Russians are moving in on the Jersey ports. They see us as weak. They see him as weak, a deaf don. It's never happened. It never will. The boy is defective." Roman turned, then his movement so fast it was a blur. In a second he had crossed the room and gripped Dario by the lapels of his expensive Italian suit. "Call my son defective again," Roman whispered, "and I will cut out your tongue so you can share his silence." Dario held up his hands in mock surrender, though his eyes gleamed with malice. "I'm only thinking of the family, Enzo. You know the rules. If the heir cannot lead, the line passes to the next capable male. That's me. Send the boy to that facility in Switzerland. They can take care of his kind." Roman shoved his brother away. "Get out." As Dario straightened his jacket and left, he cast one last look at Leo. It wasn't a look of pity. It was a look of predatory calculation. Roman sighed, the anger draining out of him, leaving only exhaustion. He walked over to his son. He knelt, snapping his fingers next to Leo's ear. Nothing. He clapped his hands. Nothing. "I'm sorry, Leo," Roman whispered, knowing the boy couldn't hear him. "I can protect you from bullets, but I can't fix this." In the corner of the room, blending into the shadows, stood the new maid. Her name was Molly. She had been hired 3 weeks ago through an agency. She was plain, wearing a grey uniform that was 2 sizes too big, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She kept her head down, scrubbed the floors until her knuckles bled, and never spoke unless spoken to. But Molly saw everything. She saw the way Leo didn't just fail to react to sound. He didn't react to vibration in the way a deaf child should. She saw the way Dario always offered Leo special candy when Roman wasn't looking, and she saw the family doctor, Dr. Aris, a man with sweaty hands and shifting eyes, administer a daily injection that he claimed was vitamin therapy to strengthen the boy's constitution. Molly gripped the handle of her feather duster. She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't Molly Bennett. Her real name was Dr. Isabel Vance. No, not Vance, Dr. Isabel Cortez. She was a pediatric neurologist who had lost her license 2 years ago after being framed for medical malpractice by a powerful pharmaceutical company. She was in hiding, working off the books. She knew a neurological block when she saw one. Leo wasn't born deaf. He was being kept deaf. But who would believe the maid over the Don's own brother? 2 days later, the Moretti estate was buzzing with tension. It was the night of the sit-down. The heads of the rival families were coming to dinner to discuss the territory disputes. It was a show of strength. Roman was on edge. He needed everything to be perfect. "Molly," the head housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, barked in the kitchen. "Take the silver polish to the study and keep the boy out of the way. The Don doesn't want him seen tonight." "Yes, ma'am," Molly said softly. She found Leo in the nursery. He was staring out the window, his small hand pressed against the glass. He looked so lonely it broke her heart. She walked over and gently touched his shoulder. Leo turned. His eyes were dull, his pupils slightly dilated. Dilated pupils, Molly thought. Photosensitivity. Lethargy. These weren't symptoms of deafness. These were symptoms of neurotoxicity. She looked at the nightstand. The special candy wrapper from Uncle Dario was there. She swiped it, pocketing the wrapper. Then she saw the vial of medicine Dr. Aris had left for the evening injection. The label read, Cerebro Vitamix. Quickly checking the door, Molly pulled a small syringe from her apron pocket, one she had stolen from the supplies days ago, and drew a tiny drop of the liquid. She didn't have a lab, but she had a pH testing strip she'd bought at a pharmacy. She dropped the liquid on the strip. It turned a violent, dark red. Acidic. Highly acidic. "Gentamicin," she whispered, her blood running cold. It was an antibiotic. In high doses, specifically in children with a certain genetic marker, it was ototoxic. It destroyed the hair cells in the ear. It caused permanent deafness and balance issues. They were overdosing him. They were chemically burning the hearing out of him. "What are you doing?" Molly gasped and spun around. Dr. Aris was standing in the doorway, his face pale and sweaty. I was just cleaning, sir," Molly stammered, hiding the test strip behind her back. "Doctor." Aris stepped forward, closing the door behind him. "You're the new girl, the quiet one. You're too curious for a maid." He glanced at the vial on the table, then back at her. "Give me what's in your hand." "I don't have anything," Molly said, backing up until her legs hit the crib. "Give it to me." Aris lunged. Molly didn't think. She reacted. She shoved the heavy medical cart toward him. It crashed into his shins. Aris howled in pain. "You stupid girl. You have no idea who you're messing with," Aris hissed. "Dario will have your head." He had admitted it. Dario. Molly grabbed Leo. She hoisted the 4-year-old onto her hip. He was heavy, but adrenaline gave her strength. "Put the boy down," Aris yelled, reaching for his phone. Molly didn't wait. She bolted out of the nursery, down the back servants' hallway. She could hear the heavy footsteps of the security guards. The dinner had already started. The 5 most dangerous men in New York were in the dining room with Roman. If she ran out the back door, they would catch her and kill her, and Leo would be lost to the silence forever. She had to do the one thing they wouldn't expect. She had to go in to the lion's den. Molly burst through the double oak doors of the grand dining room. The conversation stopped instantly. 5 men in expensive suits sat around the long mahogany table. Smoke from Cuban cigars hung in the air. Roman Moretti sat at the head, a glass of wine halfway to his lips. To his right sat Dario. Roman's eyes went wide. "What is the meaning of this?" Dario stood up, his face flushing red. "Security! Get this filth out of here. She's kidnapping the boy." 2 guards rushed in from the hallway, guns drawn. "Wait!" Molly screamed. Her voice cracked, unaccustomed to shouting. She held Leo tight against her chest. "Don't shoot! Give me my son!" Roman said, his voice deadly calm. He stood up, and the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "And then pray I make your death quick." "He isn't deaf!" Molly yelled, tears streaming down her face. The room went silent. Even the rival bosses leaned in. "Excuse me," Roman asked, stepping closer. "He isn't born deaf, Roman." Molly used his first name, a crime in itself. "They are poisoning him. Dr. Aris, your brother. They are burning his nerves with gentamicin." "Lies!" Dario shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "She's a lunatic. She attacked the doctor. Shoot her." The guards raised their weapons. "I said wait," Roman roared. He looked at Molly. He looked at the fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for the boy. "You have 5 seconds to prove it, or I put a bullet in your head myself." "I can prove it," Molly panted. "I have proof." "You're a maid," Dario scoffed. "What proof could you possibly have?" Molly shifted Leo to one arm. With her shaking free hand, she reached into her apron. The guards tensed fingers on triggers. "Slowly," Roman warned. Molly didn't pull out a weapon. She didn't pull out a phone. She pulled out a small, tattered black notebook and an old, rusted tuning fork. "This isn't a maid's diary," Molly said, her voice gaining strength. She threw the notebook onto the table. It slid across the mahogany and stopped right in front of Roman. "That is Dr. Aris's private ledger. I swiped it from his coat when I hit him with the cart. Look at the payments. Look at the dates." Roman stared at the notebook. He didn't open it yet. He looked at the tuning fork in her hand. "And that?" Roman asked. "Bone conduction," Molly said. "His inner ear is damaged by the poison, yes. Air conduction is gone. But the nerve is still alive. I checked his reflexes when he was sleeping." She looked Roman in the eye. "Watch." Molly knelt on the floor in front of the most dangerous men in the city. She struck the tuning fork against the floor. It hummed with a low, vibrant frequency. She didn't hold it to Leo's ear. She pressed the stem of the fork against the bone behind his ear, the mastoid process. For a second, nothing happened. Then Leo's eyes went wide. A gasp escaped his small lips. He reached up and touched the metal fork. He made a sound, a gurgle, a laugh. He could hear the vibration. Roman Moretti felt the world tilt on its axis. The glass of wine in his hand shattered, slicing his palm. But he didn't feel the pain. He looked at the notebook. He flipped it open with a bloody hand. Entry 42. Payment received from DM. Dosage increased. The subject's auditory response is fading. Permanent silence expected by winter. DM. Dario Moretti. Roman slowly closed the book. He looked up. The sadness in his eyes was gone. In its place was a fire that would burn the city to the ground. He looked at his brother. "Dario," Roman said softly. "Run." "Run," Roman had said. But Dario didn't run. Instead, a twisted smile broke across the younger brother's face. He reached into his jacket, not for a gun, but for a silk handkerchief. He dabbed his forehead calmly despite the fury radiating from the Don. "You always were too emotional, Roman," Dario said, his voice smooth. "That's why the commission came to me." Roman's brow furrowed. He looked at the other 4 Dons sitting around the table. Don Bianchi, the oldest of the 5 families, remained seated swirling his wine. Don Russo, a man known for his brutal temper, was casually lighting a fresh cigar. They weren't surprised. The realization hit Roman like a physical blow. This wasn't just a brother betraying a brother. This was a coup, a sanctioned execution. "I'm sorry, Enzo," Don Bianchi rasped. "But a man who lets a cripple inherit the throne is a man who will let the empire crumble. Dario promised us stability, and the Russians, they offered a very generous percentage of the Jersey ports if we let a change of management happen tonight." Molly, still clutching Leo on the floor, felt the air leave the room. She looked at the guards. They weren't aiming at Molly anymore. They were aiming at Roman. "So that's it," Roman said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. He didn't look at the guns. He looked at Dario. "You sold your own blood to the Russians and the old men. I saved the family," Dario shouted, his composure cracking. "I fixed your mistake." He pointed a shaking finger at Leo. "Kill them! Kill them all! The boy, the maid, and the former Don." "Down!" Roman screamed. He flipped the heavy mahogany table with a roar of inhuman strength. The heavy wood crashed onto its side, creating a makeshift barricade just as the room erupted in gunfire. Bullets shredded the wood. Glass exploded. Molly curled into a ball, covering Leo's body with her own, pressing his face into her chest so he wouldn't see the violence. But he could feel it. The vibrations of the gunshots were shaking the floorboards. "Stay down!" "Stay!" Roman yelled at her. He pulled a handgun from an ankle holster, a backup weapon he never went without. He wasn't firing wildly. He was calculating. Pop, pop. 2 guards dropped. Roman moved like a phantom sliding across the floor, using the chaos to flank the traitors. He didn't shoot at the Dons. Killing a boss without a trial was a death sentence he couldn't afford yet. He shot the lights. The chandelier shattered. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the muzzle flashes. "Get the boy!" Dario screamed from somewhere near the exit. Molly saw a shadow lunging toward her. It was one of the guards. She grabbed the shard of the broken wine glass Roman had dropped earlier. As the hand reached for Leo, she drove the glass into the attacker's wrist. The man screamed. Molly kicked him in the knee and scrambled backward, dragging Leo toward the servants' entrance. "Molly, go!" Roman's voice boomed from the dark. "Not without you!" she screamed back, surprising herself. She wasn't leaving him to die. If Roman died, Dario would hunt Leo down to the ends of the earth. Roman appeared out of the gloom, his white shirt stained with blood not his own. He grabbed Molly's arm and Leo's waist, hauling them through the servants' door, just as the wood splinters exploded around their heads from a shotgun blast. They sprinted down the narrow hallway. Roman knew the house better than anyone. He kicked open a hidden panel in the wainscoting that Molly hadn't even noticed. "In," he ordered. It was a chute, a laundry chute but reinforced. "It leads to the basement laundry. There's a tunnel to the garage," Roman said breathlessly. He reloaded his weapon in the dark. "Dario thinks he has the house locked down. He forgot I built this place." He shoved them into the darkness and jumped in after them. They tumbled down into a pile of linens. The basement was cool and damp. Roman didn't hesitate. He pulled them up and led them to an armored SUV parked in a private walled-off section of the garage. As the engine roared to life, Roman hit a button on the dash. The garage doors didn't open. Instead, they exploded outward, blown off their hinges by small charges Roman had rigged years ago for this exact scenario. The SUV tore into the rainy New York night, leaving the burning mansion and the betrayed brotherhood behind. Roman gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. He looked in the rearview mirror. Leo was crying silently. Molly was stroking the boy's hair, her face pale, but her eyes fierce. "You," Roman said, his voice rough. "You have a lot of explaining to do. Dr. Aris's ledger, the medical terms, the way you handled that guard." Molly met his gaze in the mirror. "Drive Mr. Moretti. Your son is going into withdrawal from the poison. If we don't get him to a safe place with clean fluids in the next hour, his kidneys will shut down." Roman stepped on the gas. The safe house was a brownstone in Brooklyn, listed under the name of a dead man. It was dusty, smelling of old paper and neglect, but it was fortified. Steel shutters covered the windows. The walls were lined with lead. Roman carried the sleeping Leo into the master bedroom and laid him on the bed. The boy was sweating profusely, his skin clammy. "The kitchen," Molly ordered, shucking off her oversized maid's cardigan. Underneath her arms were toned her movements precise. She was no longer the submissive servant. She was taking charge. "I need salt, sugar, and boiled water. If you have any activated charcoal, get it. And towels. Lots of towels." Roman Moretti, the man who made mayors tremble, found himself running to the kitchen to boil water. When he returned, Molly was checking Leo's pulse. She had propped him up with pillows. Is he going to keep his hearing?" Roman asked, standing in the doorway. He felt helpless, a feeling he despised. "The damage to the hair cells from gentamicin is usually permanent," Molly said, not sugar-coating it. She mixed the homemade electrolyte solution. "But the fact that he responded to the bone conduction is a miracle. It means the auditory nerve is intact. With cochlear implants, or maybe even hearing aids, once the inflammation goes down, he might hear. But right now my priority is saving his life. The toxicity levels are high." She gently woke Leo. The boy looked at her with groggy, fearful eyes. Molly smiled a warm, genuine smile that transformed her plain face into something beautiful. She signed something to him. Roman froze. "You know sign language." "I learned it," Molly said, helping Leo sip the water. "When I realized he wasn't responding to my voice, I started teaching him basic signs when you weren't looking. Hungry, thirsty, hurt." She looked at Roman. "He knows father, too. But he's never seen you respond to it, so he stopped using it." The words cut Roman deeper than any knife. He walked to the window, peering through the slat of the steel shutter at the empty street below. "Who are you?" Roman asked, his back to her. "You said your name was Molly Bennett, from Queens. But Molly Bennett doesn't know how to diagnose ototoxicity or disable a hitman with a wine glass." Molly sighed. She wiped Leo's forehead with a damp cloth. "My name is Isabel Cortez." Roman turned around, slowly. "The pediatric neurologist, the one who killed a child in Boston 3 years ago." "I didn't kill him," Isabel said, her voice hard. "I was the head of neurology at St. Jude's. I discovered that a new seizure medication by Omnicorp was causing fatal brain bleeds in toddlers. I tried to publish the findings. The next day my patient charts were altered. The dosage on the boy's file was changed to look like I prescribed a lethal amount. He died. They stripped my license. They threatened my sister. So, I ran. I became Molly. Roman studied her. He was a human lie detector. It was how he survived. He looked for the twitch in the eye, the sweat on the lip. She was steady as a rock. "Why my house?" Roman asked. "Because it was the last place they'd look," Isabel said. "And because the agency said you paid well. I needed money to hire a private investigator to clear my name. I didn't plan on getting attached to your son. But when I saw what they were doing to him..." Her voice broke just for a second. "I couldn't stay silent. I took an oath, Roman. Do no harm." Roman walked over to the bed. He looked down at his son, who was finally resting peacefully, his breathing even. He looked at the woman who had saved the only thing that mattered to him. "You saved him," Roman said. "And you saved me tonight. Dario would have put a bullet in my back at that table." "He still might," Isabel said. "You've lost your army, Roman. The 5 families have turned on you." "Not all of them," Roman said darkly. "Fear is a powerful motivator, but they smell blood now. They think I'm weak." He reached out and surprisingly gently took Isabel's hand. Her fingers were rough from months of scrubbing floors, but they were the hands of a surgeon. "You are not Molly the maid anymore," Roman said. "You are Dr. Cortez, and you are under my protection. If anyone comes for you, Omnicorp, the police, the devil himself, they have to go through me." Isabel pulled her hand away, flushing slightly. "We need to focus on Leo. He needs real medicine. I need a pharmacy." "I can get whatever you need," Roman said. He pulled out a burner phone. "I have a contact, a cleaner. He can bring supplies." "Is he loyal?" "He has no tongue," Roman said grimly. "He's the only one I trust." As Roman dialed, the mood in the room shifted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a heavy, charged silence. They were 2 fugitives in a steel box. A fallen king and a disgraced doctor. Suddenly, Leo stirred. He sat up, his eyes wide. He made a sound, a guttural cry. He pointed to the door. Isabel frowned. "He feels something. Vibration." Roman didn't question it. He drew his gun and moved to the hallway. He hadn't heard anything, but his son, whose world was nothing but vibration, had felt a footstep that made the floorboards tremble. Roman signaled for Isabel to get down. He crept to the front door. He peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just the dark hallway of the brownstone. Then a piece of paper slid under the door. Roman stepped back. He stared at the white rectangle against the dark wood floor. He picked it up. It was a photograph. It was a picture of Isabel taken through a window, taken right now. It showed her silhouette in the bedroom of the safe house. On the back, written in elegant cursive, were 3 words. "We have your sister." Roman cursed. He walked back into the bedroom and handed the photo to Isabel. She looked at it, and the color drained from her face. She dropped the photo as if it were burning. "Lucia!" No, they can't know where she is." "They know everything," Roman said. "Dario must have had a tail on you, or he dug into your background the moment you made a scene at the dinner." "He wants a trade," Isabel whispered, horror dawning on her. "My sister. For you. Or for Leo." Roman checked the magazine of his gun. He looked at Isabel, his eyes cold and hard as diamonds. "He made a mistake," Roman said. "What mistake?" Isabel asked, tears forming in her eyes. "He thinks I negotiate with dead men." Roman holstered the gun. "Pack the bag, Doctor. We aren't hiding anymore. We're going hunting." The rain had turned into a deluge, washing the filth of New York into the gutters, but it couldn't wash away the target painted on their backs. Roman drove the battered SUV into the bowels of Queens. He pulled into an alleyway, behind a nondescript pawn shop with barred windows. The neon sign above flickered with a dying buzz. Silas Antiques. "Stay here," Roman commanded, checking the perimeter. "Keep the doors locked. If anyone other than me comes to the window, you drive. You don't stop for red lights. You don't stop for cops." "Where are you going?" Isabel asked, her hand instinctively going to Leo's knee in the back seat. "To see a ghost." Roman stepped out into the rain. He knocked on the steel door. 3 hard raps, a pause, then 2 soft ones. A moment later the door creaked open, revealing only darkness. Roman stepped inside and disappeared. Isabel sat in the oppressive silence of the car. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked at Leo. He was awake, his eyes darting around the shadows. He reached out and touched the window glass, feeling the rhythm of the rain. "I'm sorry, Leo." She signed, her movements shaky. "We will be safe soon." Leo looked at her, his small face serious. He signed back a clumsy but distinct motion. "Father strong." Isabel felt a lump in her throat. The boy idolized a man he couldn't hear, a man who had been ready to send him away until yesterday. But children saw things adults missed. Leo saw the way Roman looked at him now, with a fierce, terrifying protectiveness. 10 minutes later, the back door opened. Roman slid in, tossing a heavy duffel bag onto the passenger seat. It clanked with the sound of metal on metal. "Silas came through," Roman said, his voice grim. "Dario has Lucia at the old meat-packing plant in the meat-packing district. It's a frontage for the family's waste disposal. Soundproof, easy to clean." Isabel felt bile rise in her throat. Waste disposal. "Don't think about it," Roman said, starting the car. "Silas also gave me this." He handed her a headset. "What is this, Tactical comms. Bone conduction," Roman said, glancing at her. "Like the tuning fork. I put one on Leo, too. It bypasses the eardrum. If I speak into this, the vibration transmits through the skull. He might not understand the words perfectly, but he will hear my voice. He'll know he's not alone." Isabel looked at the rugged man next to her. Amidst the planning of a war, he had thought of a way to connect with his son. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." Roman shifted gears, the engine growling. "We have to cross the bridge. The police are looking for a deranged maid and a kidnapper. Dario owns the precinct, Captain. We can't take the main roads. Then how do we get to Manhattan?" Roman's eyes narrowed. "We take the service tunnels, the ones they built for the subway expansion in the 90s, but never finished. My father used them to move liquor." The drive through the tunnels was a nightmare of claustrophobia. The SUV bounced over train tracks and splashed through stagnant water. The darkness was absolute, broken only by their headlights. "Why is Dario doing this?" Isabel asked, breaking the silence. "He's your brother. Why burn everything down? Because he was always second," Roman said, his gaze fixed on the endless tunnel. "When we were kids, my father gave me the first bike, the first car, the first territory. Dario thinks power is given. He doesn't understand that power is taken, and he hates Leo because Leo represents a weakness in the bloodline. In our world, weakness is a death sentence." "Leo isn't weak," Isabel said fiercely. "He perceives things you miss. He felt the guard coming before you did." "I know," Roman said softly. "I see that now." But Dario, he only sees a broken toy. They emerged from the tunnel in a construction site near Hudson Yards. The city skyline loomed above them, indifferent to their plight. "We're here," Roman said, killing the lights. The meatpacking plant was a hulking brick monstrosity by the river. Smoke billowed from a chimney, black against the night sky. "Stay in the car," Roman ordered. "I'm going in to clear a path." "No," Isabel said. She reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a small, compact pistol. She checked the chamber with a frightening familiarity. Roman stared at her. "You're a pediatrician." "I grew up in a bad neighborhood in Chicago before I went to med school, Roman," she said, her eyes steel. "And they have my sister. I'm not waiting in the car." Roman hesitated, then nodded once, a mark of respect. "Stick close. And if you see Aris—" "If I see Aris," Isabel said, gripping the gun, "he's mine." The plant smelled of copper and bleach, the smell of old blood and strong chemicals. The machinery was running loud, a rhythmic thump hiss that covered the sound of their footsteps. Roman moved like a panther, clearing the loading dock with 2 silenced shots. 2 guards fell before they even knew death had walked through the door. Isabel followed, keeping Leo between them. She had put heavy industrial earmuffs on the boy. Not that he needed them for the noise, but to signal to anyone that he was special, perhaps buying a second of hesitation. They moved through the hanging rows of beef carcasses. It was a macabre maze. "3rd floor," Roman whispered into his comms. "The administrative offices. That's where Dario would be." Suddenly a floodlight snapped on, blinding them. "So predictable, brother." Dario's voice boomed over the factory PA system. Roman shoved Isabel and Leo behind a steel conveyor belt, just as bullets began to ping off the metal. "You bring a woman and a cripple to a gunfight." Dario laughed. The sound echoed eerily in the vast space. "I'm disappointed, Enzo. I thought you'd come with an army. Instead, you came to die." Roman peeked out. The shots were coming from the catwalks above. They were pinned down. "I can't get a clear shot," Roman cursed. "They have the high ground." Isabel looked around. She saw a control panel near them. It controlled the conveyor hooks carrying the meat. "The hooks," she whispered. "If we speed them up, they'll create a moving shield." "Can you operate it? Cover me!" Roman popped up, firing 2 rounds toward the catwalk. It forced the shooters to duck. Isabel sprinted to the panel. She smashed the glass cover and jammed the lever to maximum speed. The machinery roared. The heavy carcasses began to fly along the track, swinging violently. It turned the open floor into a chaotic whirl of meat and steel. "Go!" Roman yelled. Using the swinging carcasses as cover, they moved forward. The bullets from above struck the dead meat, thudding harmlessly. They reached the stairwell. Roman kicked the door open. They sprinted up the stairs, lungs burning. 3rd floor, the office. Roman didn't knock. He blew the hinges off with a shotgun he'd taken from one of the fallen guards on the dock. They burst into the room. It was a lavish office, contrasting sharply with the slaughterhouse below. Persian rugs, leather sofas. Dario stood behind a large oak desk, a golden pistol in his hand. But he wasn't alone. Dr. Aris was there, holding a scalpel to the throat of a young woman tied to a chair. Lucia. Her face was bruised, her eyes wide with terror. "Drop it, Enzo!" Dario screamed. "Or the doctor carves her up right now." Roman froze. He slowly lowered his weapon. Isabel gasped, seeing her sister. "Lucia." "Bella, run." Lucia choked out. "So touching," Aris sneered. "The reunion of the Cortez sisters, or should I say the fugitives." Dario walked around the desk, smiling. Kick the gun over Enzo. Roman slid the shotgun across the floor. Now, Dario said, aiming at Roman's chest. This is how it ends. No more legends. No more Don Roman. Just a corpse in a meat factory. He cocked the hammer. Isabel's eyes darted around the room. She saw the fire alarm pull station on the wall behind Aris, but she couldn't reach it. Then she looked at Leo. The boy was staring at Dario. He wasn't looking at the gun. He was looking at the floor near the desk. There was a thick power cable running to a heavy oscillating fan near Dario's feet. Isabel signed rapidly, her hand hidden by her side. Leo. Fan. Pull. It was a gamble, a massive one. Would he understand? Leo blinked. He looked at the fan. He looked at the cord near his foot. Say goodbye, brother, Dario said. Leo stomped on the cord and yanked it with all his 4-year-old might. The heavy industrial fan, perched precariously on a filing cabinet, didn't just unplug. It tipped over. It crashed down right onto Dario's shoulder. Crack! Dario screamed, the gun firing wildly into the ceiling as he collapsed under the weight of the metal cage. Now! Roman roared. He didn't dive for his gun. He dove for Dario. Isabel didn't wait either. She charged at Dr. Aris. Aris, panicked by the sudden chaos, slashed the scalpel at her. Isabel ducked, feeling the blade whistle past her ear. She tackled him, driving her shoulder into his gut. They crashed into a glass display cabinet. Aris was stronger than he looked. He grabbed Isabel by the throat, squeezing. I should have overdosed that brattet when I had the chance, he spat. Isabel's vision swam. She reached blindly behind her on the floor. Her fingers closed around a shard of glass from the cabinet. You hurt children, she rasped. She jammed the shard into Aris's thigh. He howled and let go. Isabel scrambled up. She grabbed a heavy brass statue from the desk and swung it with all her rage. It connected with the side of Aris's head. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Isabel rushed to Lucia, untying the ropes with trembling hands. I've got you. I've got you. Across the room, Roman had Dario pinned to the ground. His hands were around his brother's throat. Dario was purple, gasping for air, his eyes bulging. Roman, stop! Isabel yelled. Roman froze. His grip didn't loosen. He tried to kill my son. If you kill him now, you're just a murderer, Isabel said, holding Lucia. He's beaten. We need him alive. We need him to confess to the commission. If he dies, the other families will never stop hunting you. Roman breathed heavily. The red haze in his eyes slowly cleared. He looked at Dario, broken, pathetic, gasping. He released his grip. He stood up, smoothing his suit, regaining the aura of the Don. You're right, Roman said coldly. Death is too easy for him. He walked over to Leo. He knelt down and checked the boy. Leo was unharmed, looking at the fallen fan with a sense of wonder. Roman placed a hand on Leo's cheek. He looked at Isabel. We have Lucia, Roman said. We have the traitor, but we aren't out yet. Dario called for backup before you came in. The Russians are on their way. He walked to the window and looked out. Headlights were flooding the parking lot. Dozens of them. We're surrounded, Roman said calmly. Isabel stood up, supporting her sister. So what do we do? Roman turned back, a dangerous smile playing on his lips. We defend the castle, and I make a phone call to the one person who hates the Russians more than I do. Who him? The FBI. The FBI. Isabel looked at him as if he had grown a second head. You are the capo dei capi. You don't call the feds. You kill them. The world has changed, Isabel, Roman said, dialing a number he had memorized for emergencies, a number belonging to a senior agent he had once compromised, but now needed as an ally. And tonight, I am not a capo. I am a father. He pressed the phone to his ear. Agent Miller, it's Moretti. Shut up and listen. I'm at the dank meat-packing plant on the west side. I have Dario Moretti, the head of the Russian Bratva's New York cell, and enough evidence to bury the 5 families for a decade. Yes, I'm offering it to you on a silver platter. But you have to get here in 3 minutes, or there will be nothing left but corpses. He hung up. They're coming, Roman said, but the Russians are closer. Glass shattered downstairs. The heavy thud of boots on concrete echoed up the stairwell. The Russians were inside. Barricade the door, Roman ordered. He dragged the heavy oak desk, pushing Dario's unconscious body aside with his foot. Isabel helped him, her muscles burning. They tipped the desk against the door just as the first bullets splintered the wood. We just have to hold them for 3 minutes, Roman shouted over the gunfire. He pulled Isabel and Lucia into the corner, shielding them with his body. Leo was curled up, hands over his earmuffs, eyes squeezed shut. The door hinges screamed. A heavy battering ram was hitting it. Thud, thud. Roman! Isabel cried out, as a bullet grazed her arm, tearing the fabric of her sleeve. Stay down! Roman returned fire through the hole in the door. He was counting the rounds. 4 left, 3 left. The door gave way. 2 massive men in dark coats burst in AK-47s raised. Roman stood up his gun empty. He prepared to charge them with nothing but a letter opener he'd grabbed from the desk. He would die, but he would buy Isabel 5 seconds. Suddenly, a deafening noise filled the room. Not gunfire, but a voice amplified by a megaphone. Federal agents, drop your weapons! Blue and red lights flashed through the office window, blindingly bright. The sound of a helicopter roared overhead, shaking the dust from the ceiling. The Russians froze. They looked at Roman, then at the window. They knew the game was up. In New York, you can fight a rival gang, but you don't fight a SWAT team siege. They dropped their guns. Roman exhaled, his shoulders slumping. He looked at Isabel. Blood was trickling down his forehead, but he was smiling. I told you, he said breathlessly. 3 minutes. Agent Miller, a grey-haired man in a windbreaker, stormed into the room moments later, followed by a tactical team. He looked at the carnage, the unconscious doctor, the tied-up Dario, the terrified women, and the defiant Don. You made a hell of a mess, Moretti, Miller spat. I gave you the biggest bust of your career, Roman replied calmly. He pointed to Dario. He's yours, and the ledger on the desk that connects the Russians to the Port Authority. It's all there. And you, Miller asked, narrowing his eyes. You think you just walk away? Roman reached down and picked up Leo. The boy buried his face in his father's neck. I'm retired, Roman said. Roman Moretti the Don died in this room tonight. If you want to arrest me, go ahead. But you'll lose the testimony against the Russians. Your choice. Miller looked at the ledger. He looked at the press vans already arriving outside. He looked at the family. Get out of here, Miller muttered, before I change my mind. 6 months later. The air in Tuscany tasted different than the air in New York. It lacked the metallic tang of subway brakes and the ozone smell of impending violence. Here the air was heavy with the scent of cypress sun-baked earth and the late-harvest grapes ripening in the vineyard that now belonged to a man named Luca Rossi. Roman Moretti, now Luca, stood on the terracotta terrace, watching the sunrise bleed over the rolling hills. He gripped the stone railing until his knuckles turned white. Old habits died hard. Even in paradise, he woke up at 4:00 a.m., checking the perimeter, looking for shadows that weren't there. He wasn't the Don anymore. The FBI had kept their word largely because the ledger Roman handed over had dismantled the Russian Bratva's entire East Coast operation. The Bureau had quietly erased the Moretti file in exchange for the biggest organized crime bust of the century. Roman was officially a ghost, but the ghosts of the past still haunted him. He looked down at the scar on his palm, the one from the wine glass he'd shattered the night Molly, no Isabel, had changed his world. "You're doing it again," a soft voice said from the doorway. Roman turned. Isabel stood there, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. She didn't look like the frightened maid anymore. She looked like Dr. Isabel Cortez. Her medical license had been reinstated 3 months ago after the FBI corroborated her evidence against Omnicorp. She was currently consulting remotely for a research hospital in Geneva, specializing in pediatric neurorecovery. "Doing what?" Roman asked, his voice gravelly with sleep. "Waiting for the other shoe to drop," Isabel said, walking over to him. She placed a hand on his tense forearm. "There is no other shoe, Roman. Dario is in a supermax prison. Aris is serving 20 years. We won." "I know." Roman sighed, covering her hand with his. "It's just today." Today was the day. For the past 6 months, Leo had been undergoing intense therapy. The gentamicin poisoning had done severe damage, destroying the cilia in his cochlea. But Isabel had been right. The auditory nerve was intact. 2 months ago, they had flown in a specialist from Zurich to perform cochlear implant surgery. They had drilled into the bone behind Leo's ear, threading an electrode array into the cochlea. For weeks, Leo had walked around with the external processor turned off, allowing the surgical site to heal. He had lived in silence, communicating with the sign language Isabel had taught him and Roman. They had become a silent family, bound by hand gestures and expressive eyes. But today, they were driving to Florence to turn the device on. He might not like it. Roman confessed the fear evident in his eyes. The doctor said it won't sound like natural hearing. It will sound robotic, electronic. What if it scares him? What if I fail him again? "You haven't failed him," Isabel said fiercely, turning him to face her. "You saved him. You walked away from an empire for him. And today, you're just going to hold his hand. That's all a father has to do." The drive to the clinic in Florence was quiet. Leo sat in the back, clutching a stuffed lion Roman had bought him. He seemed to sense the tension, his large eyes darting between the adults in the front seat. The clinic was modern, a stark contrast to the rustic villa. Dr. Moretti, no relation, the audiologist, was a kind woman, with patience etched into her features. She sat Leo down in a soundproof booth. Roman and Isabel sat on either side of him. "Okay," the doctor said in Italian, which Isabel translated to American Sign Language for Leo. "We are going to do the mapping now. We will find the softest sounds you can hear, and the loudest sounds that are comfortable." She placed the external processor behind Leo's ear. A small magnet clicked it into place against the internal implant. Roman stopped breathing. The doctor pressed a key on her computer. Nothing happened for a second. Then Leo's left eye twitched. He reached up his small fingers, brushing the plastic device. He looked confused. The doctor adjusted a frequency. "I'm sending a low-pitch signal now." Leo gasped. It was a sharp intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. He turned his head rapidly, looking for the source. He looked at the wall. He looked at the floor. He had never heard a sound that didn't come from a physical vibration he could feel through his feet. This was coming from inside his head. "Is he in pain?" Roman asked, half rising from his chair. "No," Isabel whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "He's discovering." The doctor continued the mapping, setting the threshold levels. Then she nodded to Roman. "Talk to him. Keep it simple." Roman knelt in front of the chair. He felt terrified, more terrified than he had been when facing a loaded gun. He took Leo's small hands in his. "Leo," Roman said. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again, softer. "Leo." The boy's eyes locked onto Roman's lips, but this time there was something else. A spark of recognition. The visual movement of the lips matched the strange robotic hum in his ear. Leo frowned. He pulled one hand free and reached out. He placed his palm on Roman's throat, just like he used to do when checking for vibration. Roman spoke again. "It's Papa, I'm here." Leo felt the rumble in the throat. He heard the sound in the ear. The connection snapped into place. The bridge was built. A slow, wide "what-to-film-to" spread across Leo's face, a smile so pure it could have lit up the darkest alley in Queens. He opened his mouth. His vocal cords were rusty from disuse, unpracticed in shaping words. "Pa." It was a breathy exhale. He tried again, louder, mimicking the vibration. "Papa." The dam broke. Roman Moretti, the man who had ordered executions and silenced witnesses, fell to his knees. He buried his face in his son's lap, his shoulders shaking with violent, silent sobs. Leo patted his father's hair, confused but happy. He looked at Isabel. "Mama." He tried looking at her. Isabel let out a wet laugh, joining them on the floor. She wrapped her arms around both of them. "Yes, baby. Mama is here too." They didn't leave the clinic for another hour. When they finally walked out into the Florence afternoon, the world was loud. Vespers buzzed tourists, chattered church bells rang. Leo was overwhelmed, clutching his ears, but he refused to take the processor off. He wanted to hear it all. They walked to a quiet piazza and sat by a fountain. The water splashed rhythmically. Leo was mesmerized by it, listening to the splash-drip-splash. Roman watched him for a long time, then turned to Isabel. The adrenaline of the chase was gone. The crisis was over. All that was left was the rest of their lives. "I don't know how to do this," Roman said quietly. "I don't know how to be a normal man, Isabel. I don't know how to be the man you deserve." Isabel took the tuning fork out of her purse. She still carried it everywhere, a talisman of their survival. She struck it against the stone bench and held it up between them, listening to the faint hum. "You changed the frequency of your entire life for him," Isabel said. "You rewrote your history. A bad man doesn't do that, Roman. A bad man stays in the dark." She lowered the fork and took his hand. "I don't need a Don, and I don't need a hero. I just need the man who drove through a hurricane to save a child he barely knew. I need the man who learned to listen." Roman looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the woman who had challenged him, saved him, and loved his son as her own. "Then you have him," Roman whispered. "Forever." He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't desperate or hurried. It was slow, deliberate, and full of promise. It was a kiss that sealed a pact deeper than any blood oath. Nearby, Leo laughed, a bright, ringing sound that rose above the noise of the city. He was chasing a pigeon, clapping his hands and giggling at the sharp smack sound his palms made. Roman broke the kiss and looked at his son. He listened to the laughter. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. And that is the incredible story of Roman Isabel and the brave little boy who found his voice. From the cold penthouse in New York to the sunny hills of Tuscany, they proved that family isn't just about blood. It's about who is willing to fight for you when the whole world turns its back. Roman thought he needed a perfect heir to be strong, but he learned that true strength comes from protecting the vulnerable. What did you think of Molly's, or rather Dr. Isabel's, quick thinking with the tuning fork? Would you have risked your life against the 5 families? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a happy ending today, and subscribe with the notification bell on so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.